As the corporate sector evolves, Berkha Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Berkha Africa. Berkha Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Berkha's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Berkha supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.berkhaafrica.com for more information.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. This is the Leadership Dialogue, and proudly brought to you by Berkha Africa. In today's session on the Leadership Dialogue, we have a very interesting topic: coaching for change, leading through uncertainty and transitions. Leadership today is being tested in several ways, and the demand for more technical skills and authority and competencies to transition institutions, organizations, and even nations has become very, very demanding. And that is what has called for a dynamic shifts in the styles of leadership that leaders bring to bear in this continuously evolving trends. There are a lot of things that are coming up, transitions that are required from old styles of leading people into the new age, and the need for coaching to inspire, empower individuals and teams to the next levels. And today, joining me in the studio, we have Coach Sandra Ihenacho. Pardon me, she would mention it properly when she comes on board. Coach Sandra is the COO of M-Brand Consulting Limited, and also an oracle. Says she's a voice in Africa. She's a leading voice in Africa's training, learning, and development. She leads training transfer effectiveness and several other leadership and coaching initiatives, both in Nigeria and across Africa. Coach Sandra, good morning and welcome to the Leadership Dialogue.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you may be watching this video from. It's a pleasure.
It's nice to have you on board today.
Thank you so much, Lizzie.
And all the way from Sierra Leone, but he says he's joining us from the Gambia, we have Marlon Bockarie-Konteh, Esquire. Marlon is the Director of Policy, Research, Planning and Knowledge Management at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Sierra Leone. He's worked with KPMG and several consulting firms across Africa and globally. Also, Marlon is an ESG expert. He's a leading speaker on most ESG platforms across Africa, and he's here to bring some perspectives on leadership, transitions, and sustainability. Marlon, good morning and welcome to the Leadership Dialogue.
Good morning, Lizzie. Good morning, everyone. And viewers, listeners, wherever you are, you're welcome to this wonderful session. I may hasten to just make an adjustment in the profile that you gave. I used to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now I'm moved to the Ministry of Youth. So I'm now leading the youth policy for the country.
Awesome. The next generational leaders.
Yes. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you for coming on to the show. So the Leadership Dialogue webinar series is a platform that is created by Berkha Africa that seeks to create a reflective and practical space where leaders, emerging leaders, and young professionals who aspire to be change agents come together to engage in conversations on several topics that border around leadership, transformation, and sustainability. And have several dialogue series where we pitch from coaching to leadership to governance. And today we're looking mostly at leading through transitions. Today we want to explore how coaching can serve as a tool and a lever for building sustainable leadership practices, especially in our modern states where there are transitions, global transitions, economic transitions, where we need different perspectives to be brought together. And today, for those of us who have joined us, what are we looking at? We want to see how leaders can be equipped with certain coaching soft skills and coaching skills to guide in decision making that promotes transparency, trust, how leaders can become very agile and move teams into collaborative, future ready institutions that are ready for change and impact in their industries. Coach Sandra,
Yeah, hello.
you have been working within the leadership space, especially in executive coaching, for some time.
Yeah, I have.
Yes. What can you say about the current trend of leadership in Africa before we jump into the issues of the day?
Okay, what I would say is the normal traditional way of leadership, hierarchical, whereby you're telling people what to do, the manager is bossing people around. It's There's a shift now in Africa. I started coaching as far back as 2010. That's when I got introduced to coaching. That's like 15 years ago. It was very new. It was very new in Africa, even in Nigeria where I am. However, what we've seen recently, I'm saying as far back as 5 years now, leaders they are trying because they're still not there. They're trying to make use of coaching skills. I tell leaders, you don't necessarily need to be a coach. Like, I'm a certified coach, transformational coach. I went through all the certifications. So I say to leaders, especially when I'm having executive training or with them, I'd say you don't need to be a coach. However, you can use the coaching skills. Your leadership can have the coaching style whereby you're asking lots of questions and listening. So using those coaching skills and those coaching behavior to lead your people will go a very long way. And those that have started imbibing it are already seeing the results of using coaching as a style.
So what are some of the ways that leaders can integrate coaching principles? You just mentioned you don't necessarily need to be a coach, but at least you need some aspect of coaching, some coaching principles that can help you transition your teams into highly effective teams. What are some of the coaching principles? How do you think leaders can integrate some of these into their leadership styles to drive change?
Okay, so one of them is ask, don't tell. A lot of managers, a lot of leaders are very good in telling. There's a problem, they're telling you what to do. You come to them they give you a task and you're wasting time. They tell you how to solve it. You come with your questions, you come with a problem. Instead of asking you, they are telling you. So one thing I tell leaders is try not to tell, ask. Let me give a very clear scenario. A leader, a direct report comes to the leader and maybe asks the leader, I've been struggling with this report. So how do I go about doing it? Or how do I go about doing it? Instead of saying, just do this, do A, B, C, D, E, F. The person would never tend to use his creative juices to think and to become better. Ask, what do you think you can do? How do you think you can go about it? If you do this, what do you think will happen? So you can say, so one is ask, learn to ask questions, try not to tell. Second, listen. I think that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Why? So that we can listen more and speak less. A lot of leaders don't tend to listen. They speak more. Even before the direct report finishes, they're already talking. So as one of the coaching skills you should have is to listen. Listen to them. And from there, you know what to do. The third is to be present. You have a leader that is working on something and somebody comes in and I said, I'm listening to you, keep talking. But you're doing something. Is a myth. That's my school of thought. I'm going with the school of thought that says multitasking is a myth. I totally agree. It's a myth. You cannot multitask. One would suffer. So be present by listening. Stop what you're doing and listen to the person that's being present. So these are some of the skills and one of the behavior as a leader you could exhibit to be able to lead effectively.
Interesting. Very interesting. You've spoken about asking more rather than talking more or telling more, listening more, and being present. But in today's conversation, we are exploring leading through transitions. How can a leader who is already transitioning within his own self be positioned to exhibit these skills? Because we find leaders in a lot of in a very interesting space these days, because you're trying to discover yourself, you're trying to get your feet around the evolving trends, you're trying to remain relevant in your space. At the same time, you have corporate objectives to drive, you have people to manage. So where does all of these sit in the person's personal space before exhibiting it in managing and leading the people that they lead?
I think something I try to correct, I teach in the Lagos Business School here in Lagos, Nigeria. And something I try to correct is, this is my personal opinion, right? A lot of people, those that are managing people, we call them leaders. A lot of them are not leaders. I've not thought about a name to call them because even in Africa, even outside Africa, those that, like, let's say the head of departments, they call them leaders. In some sense, some of them are not leaders. Who is a leader? That's where we have to start from. Who is a leader first? And what I found out and what I try to also teach in the business school is leadership starts from self-leadership. Anybody that has not led himself or herself cannot lead others. It's basic. Someone that's not been able to manage his own emotions, that is having tantrums, that is having difficulties, that has not solved his own solution difficulties in. Now you're not imposing that person upon like 5 people, 10 people with different problems to come. It will not work. Every leadership starts with self-leadership. Anyone that's not self-led himself or herself will lead those those people he or she wants to lead, will lead them into ruin. So where does the journey start from? Self-leadership. You know that you need coaching skills as a leader, that this is something. Have a business review, read the reviews, recent reviews, last year's own, last 2 years own. They're still speaking about coaching. And coaching is not traditional management, it's traditional leading. It is something modern. Now, it talks about coaching. Now, you found out that this is where organizations are going. We have different generations in the work system. How do I imbibe these skills and this behavior to make my people to deliver better? You find out, what do I have? You check yourself. I think I don't listen enough. I ask questions rather than I tell people rather than asking questions. I'm not empathetic. I do not manage my emotions. So you have to self-evaluate yourself and see where you're not getting it right and start getting that right before you're able to now say, I want to do this. So tell yourself the truth. So for instance, let me use myself for an example. One of the challenges I've been working on, like 3 years ago, this year, I think I'm improving, is I'm very impatient. Yeah. You cannot be impatient if you're leading Gen Zs, millennials, even the baby boomers. You cannot be impatient. You need to learn to be patient. And so I've been working on myself and saying, Sandra, everyone cannot be like you. And that's me evaluating myself and knowing that this is who I am. So for leaders to be able to lead people in this, we are in a high uncertainty period that you need to think on your feet. You need to re-strategize things. You're already doing things. Next thing, the business is turning to another way. Next in the economy, you need to start re-strategizing again. And you need people to help you to do this. So evaluate yourself. What are those skills that are lacking in me? I need to work on. With that, work on yourself, then you'll be able to help your team. And if they see that you're working on yourself, they will be ready to help you. Like my team are trying to help me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Coach Sandra. And I love the bit where you spoke about being patient. That's one of my goals for the month of October. I'm working on my patience level. So I put it long suffering, because you need to be intentional about it. You want to move, but then you have to suffer and hold back and try to fit within and pull people along. Thank you for being so open about the things that you're working on, and very, very thoughtful and insightful things you said, because how can we lead when we have not yet led ourselves properly? Because our leadership will be more of a reflection of the things we have discovered ourselves, the things we are mastering, that we can translate and make impacts. Yes, Mr. Bockarie, you are in the space of research, policy, research, planning, and knowledge management. And I believe in line with your work, you deal with a lot of leaders, building policy for the public service and other international organizations. Before I zoom into the topic, I just want to ask, do you think that leadership, African leaders, are prepared for the times that we are in?
Yes, good morning again, everybody. Good afternoon, or wherever you are. It's interesting when you talk about leadership. Often I define leadership as someone that has an idea and can amass support for that idea, but also lead the process of implementing that idea. So individuals could be in leadership role, but they are not leaders. So that's the difference. The level of preparedness for Africa, if I will put a figure to it in a range from 1 to 10, I will say is 3 to 4. The current
That is
leadership,
very high.
I thought it was very low because he hasn't
That
passed
is very high. That is
because
very high. Looking at the trend of things and the kind of, yes, but I think you've been very generous.
I know, because That is key because the current crop of leaders that we have are struggling with whether they are leaders or they are in leadership role. And that often confuses them. When they are in leadership role, we call them managers. They want to get things done here and there. But leaders want to take everybody along. Leaders want to ensure you listen at a scale. Leaders should ensure there is proper coordination, ensuring that the individuals you are leading become better version of themselves. My work over the years have been on ensuring that I develop appropriate policies, but also programs to give effect to those policies. So for a start, I will define it that way. And with the scale that you said is a little bit high, I think it's a point of encouraging the current crop of leaders to do better in ensuring that they lead this generation. And this generation for us as Africans, our median age is 19. Can you imagine that? You imagine the level of uncertainty that is in that age. You imagine the level of transition that is taking place in that age. You imagine the level of skills gap, knowledge gap in that space. But what we as leaders, or what us who are managing this space should understand, is ensuring that we prepare this crop that we currently have to fully appreciate this, but also provide a future readiness for what is to come.
Future readiness. Future readiness. And that is where sustainability comes in.
Yes.
Putting in sustainable systems and structures that would guide you into and guide your institutions and people into where we want to be. And that brings me to the question of, for those of you who are joining us, those of you who are leaders of institutions, but like Coach Sandra said, you have to be a leader of yourself first before you can properly lead. I'm just wondering, what phase are you in your leadership journey right now? What phase are you in your leadership journey right now? Where did you set off to be? Where are you now?
Currently,
and where do you want to be? And how do you get there? So, Marlon, that brings to bear the structures and the systems you're talking about. What structures or systems do we have in place to be able to manage the uncertainties in our current business and leadership space? So that is very, very thoughtful. And one thing you also said is leading the process of implementation. So in uncertainties, when we are transitioning, every day trends are changing. I want to reflect the question back to you. How should leadership lead the process of implementing change for effective institutions?
in my own case, as the director of policy, I focus on soliciting concerns, suggestions, because for us as government, you need to establish the appropriate policies. So I will have to share my experience having worked in the youth space for about 8 years now. I started by having the review of first the youth policy, because that policy becomes a framework for implementation, but also a framework for partners' collaboration. Because as a government, partners will have to come and ask, what is the policy on youth? What do you really have on youth? So what we did was to have a policy review. We review our policy in 2020 to 2025. It's ending this year. But also what we did in support to that is to ensure we also have a sector strategic plan, ensuring that we leave no one behind, ensuring that the sector factors all the participants. It could be government, it could be private sector, it's also the young people, it could be the donors, it could be the IPs, we call them implementing partners. We want to ensure all of us are in the room, we agree on what are the appropriate next steps. In addition to that, what we've been able to do is to establish institutions, because we've already done our gap analysis in giving effect to this policy. We ensure we are able to establish institutions, and these institutions should have distinct roles, because if you don't have those distinct roles, confusion will start who does what where. So that has been our approach. We've been able to do that. But what also we've been able to do is to ensure that we are able to develop processes and systems. That doesn't mean we are locking in creativity. We ensure that the processes recognizes the individual, but the processes also encourages the individual to be constructive in his thinking or her thinking, but also be engaging in rolling out this program. Another component we also did is to provide training. Having got the policies, the sector strategic plan, the youth policy, the institutions, the processes, we needed to train the individual to man that. There were extensive training comes in, training on coaching, training on leadership, training on coordination, but ensuring that you listen at a scale, because what we've learned over the years is that most of our leaders don't listen, and they have this paternalistic approach of solving problem, which is changing with the Gen Zs, with the young people. They want their voices to be heard. And history has taught us that we often say in Sierra Leone, there's nothing for us without us. We cannot be talking about young people. We don't have young people at the center of the discussion. So we ensure that the young people are at the center of the discussion, but also give them the right skills, give them the right expertise to ensure that their contribution becomes meaningful, but also when they are rolling those programs, the programs are very impactful. Most often, we just look at ticking up the box. Oh, we should reach 100 young people. How has that been impactful? Have we asked expert opinion on those? Have we also asked lived experiences? Have we asked the young people to come and share with us their lived experiences? Because this will also make our policies and our programs much more impactful and beneficiary to the greater good.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. If you're joining us, whether on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, this is the Leadership Dialogue. I would like to know where you're joining us from. And if you have a question, please just put it in your chat box or in your comment. I'll read it out loud to our guest. And it would be nice for us to know who you are and where you're joining us from. Thank you so much, Mr. Bockarie. I'm just going to reflect back a few of the key points that you have raised, which are very crucial in the conversation that we are having. You've mentioned the issue of the gaps that exist in our current public. I would say public because you focus more on public, but I think the same gap exists in a lot of private institutions. The issue of structures, systems, and policies. And I really appreciate what you just said you are doing in your sector right now. What structures do we have in place? If you are a leader joining, these are some of the questions that you should be putting down for reflection and engagement with your people. You spoke about inclusive leadership, and leaders should engage with their people in the design of the policies. But first, what structures do you have in place? What systems are you putting in place? What policies have you designed to run the systems that you are putting in place? And then competency development. You spoke a lot about trainings that are doing. If you have the structures, you have the systems, you have the policies. The next lap, according to you, is the competency development. Building the competencies of your teams, of the people that you work with, who run the implementation and bring into reality whatever systems and you are putting in place for the achievement of your business, both private, public, national objectives. So competencies, you can look at trainings, you can look at coaching and mentoring. And according to Mr. Bockarie, all of these things must be in place for you to see the maximum impact. And that is very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Mr. Bockarie. Let me get back to Coach Sandra. Coach Sandra, we've had the systems and the processes. Now we want to switch it to the soft, but very, very crucial bit, which is the coaching bit. So in all of this, where does coaching come in? Because in all the things Mr. Bockarie said, he kind of landed on one more thing, which is listening. He says, leaders don't listen. And from your initial comments, listening is very crucial in both coaching and effective leadership. Where does coaching sit in all of these?
So thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, Mr. Bockarie, for what you've shared. And I was listening and smiling because I was relating to some of the things you were saying, because there are also things that we do in the private sector. Now, where does coaching come in? You have structures. Even before you have that structures and systems, it's people that are going to develop it, isn't it? It's not AI that will develop it. AI can just assist you. So it's people that will develop it. Now you need people to come together to do that. Now, for instance, you want to develop structures and you want to use like 2 months to do it. And within 2 months, you're not yet able to do it. If you're using your coaching style, which is you're asking questions, you're creating. Now, when I talked, another thing I didn't, because of I didn't want to say everything at once. Something else I didn't add was creating an enabling environment. That's one of the behavior as a coach you should have. Create an environment whereby people can ask questions, people can confront you, people can say things that you may feel that is not what will go well with you. As a coach, you're able to create that environment whereby people could come up to you. Now, you want those structures, you have to be able to listen to get those structures. You have to create an environment whereby if you do not know how to create the structure and you're causing confusion, those that are seeing you that you're causing confusion will tell you, Salma, I think this is how we should do it. If you've not created that environment, they will allow you to enter that deep hole. They will say, let's watch him or her. He or she is heading somewhere. Let them enter that deep hole. They will allow you to enter there. And when you enter there, they will cover you. So if you're able to, 1, ask questions, 2, listen to them, 3, create an enabling environment that they can approach you, 4, be empathetic, 5, have emotional intelligence, whereby myself and Lizzie were already working on patience. So instead of they do something that will get you angry, because it happens all the time, even my staff. And I'm like, take a deep breath. I take a deep breath. I count, I pause. I count on to up to 10. If not, if I speak, then the whole office will explode. And also have emotional intelligence, being able to manage your emotions. So these are 5 things I've listed now. If you're able to work with these 5 things, there are more than this. Let's start. I tell people, start small. Small, little drops of water make a notion. Start small. If you're unable to work on just those 5 things, then those structures you want to create, those systems you want to create, it will be easier for you to create it. And when there are challenges, you'll be able to see people that will come back to it. And when people will not resist. Now, let me say something about resistance. People feel that people resist things because they just want to resist. No, Resistance is a form of fear. People are afraid, and that's why they resist. And so if your people you've created that environment and they don't have fear, I tell you, they will not resist whatever change that is coming. They will go with you. They'll be in the same boat with you, and you'll move together.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for throwing more light on creating an enabling environment. If you are listening to us, at the heart of it is your leadership competencies. And how do you create an enabling environment for people to feel safe and vulnerable to transition with you and the institution towards achieving your overall objectives, whether corporate or national or institutional objectives? So from all I'm hearing, it's like most of the work is dependent on the leader's competencies. And from what I hear from you, Coach Sandra, I think strategic humility comes into bear. You see, when you reflected back that Coach Liziane and myself are still working on that bit, I just laughed because how many leaders can be open and vulnerable, to be vulnerable with the team that you lead? Just yesterday, I was sharing with a team of leaders that we are in a space where leadership has to be very strategic and be open to be vulnerable to the people that they lead, because that is where connection is built. And from what you said, it's a true reflection of what I've been thinking about and talking over the week. Because when you come into the space and say, this is where we are, these are the new trends, this is what the economic status is, this is our current state, this is not where we want to be as an institutions. Being vulnerable takes you into that zone where you ask, where do we go from here? And I think that's tips back into what Marlon was saying, that you have to create an inclusive leadership. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Coach Sandra, I want you to touch more on that. You mentioned emotional intelligence, creating an enabling environment. How can leaders create an enabling environment where everybody feels safe to contribute and add value towards the direction that the institution is looking at, especially in forging the way forward in uncertainties?
I like being very practical when I speak, and I like relating it to experiences, right? It's just like a family that have a mother or a father that have children. When you keep shouting down at your children, will they speak to you? When they want to say anything, they're quiet. They don't say anything. Same thing in the organization. When you have, and that's why I said, I'm trying to use what Marlon said. So it's not a leader, because Marlon also agreed with me that it's not all people in leadership positions are leaders. So we have that agreement. So when you have somebody in that leadership position is shouting down at his employees, is not empowering, is when there's success, he takes it that the success is me. When there's a failure, he points at his people. You are the one that caused this failure. You are the one. When they need him or her support, they don't get it. When they need to be empowered, they need tools to do their work, he doesn't do it. Where do I start counting from? When you're doing all this and it's time for you want people to work for you, they will not. Now, I like using public sector as an example. Pardon me, Marlon, because I've been able to train a lot of public sector. There was somebody in one of the trainings I was doing in Nigeria, and she said that they did shege. I don't know how to call shege. I hope shege you understand, as in pepper. They peppered their director. They hid all the files director needed for approval. The president was supposed to give an approval. They hid everything. So let us see how he will find that file. With all these problems he has caused us here. There are women, they said they cry. Some of them, they cry at even to come to work because of the toxicity in the organization. They hid that file. The director looked for file, nothing. And that was a problem for that. I think even the director was removed or something, because that was very important. what do you think would have led such people to do such thing to their leader in quotes? Because of how he has managed them. There's no inclusivity. You don't allow people to speak. There's no room for people to give suggestion. Is everything you say. People do not, you tell them they don't think, they don't have brains. Which school did they go to? Where do I start from? I've seen it because I've been in such situations before. Yeah. In my early days of when I started working. We want people to give us the best. It starts from creating that environment. Allow people to speak up. Allow people to share their opinions. Allow people to make mistakes. I'm not saying critical mistakes. Allow them to make mistakes. And when they make that mistake, let them know that they will not be shut down, that there's room for improvement. Let me stop there. If not, I'll continue to talk.
Coach Sandra, the issue of allowing people to make mistakes, I know a leader will be wondering, hey, so I should allow them to make mistakes, rework. But I think that is all part of the growth, knowing that the people you lead are humans and they are also evolving. So being patient with them, like you said, transitioning them from where they are into where you want to be. It's a lot of work. Like Marlon said, you are leading the process of implementation. And the people who drive the implementation are human beings who are still in the process of becoming. Thank you so much for that. Before I continue with our conversation, I have Emmanuel Pencil. And Emmanuel is sharing a comments from LinkedIn. He says, particularly in the HR space, most leaders think per their roles they know more than the HR professionals, and they don't want to listen to you, particularly if you are a junior professional. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Yes, these are some of the challenges that team members are facing with their leaders, just like the two guests have said. So that is why, as agents of change, leadership is being called to drive inclusivity. No one person knows it all, just like Coach Sandra and Mr. Bockarie has said. So knowing that the people that you lead, they have some values. That is why you have brought them on board as team members. That should help you to be strategically humble as a leader, to listen, ask more, listen, and be present. Thank you, Emmanuel, for that. Yes, let me come back to the studio to our guests, Coach Sandra and Marlon. And I think the things that you said is just being reflected by one of our participants on the webinar. Leaders who don't listen, leaders who think they know it all. You know, we are transitioning, the world is transitioning, institutions are transitioning, and we must be in a constant phase of reimagining ourselves. How do we handle such leaders who don't listen, who think they know it all? Should we deal with them like the people who in Nigeria keep all the files and show them shege?
Let me allow Marlon to go before I go. Marlon, you can speak.
Marlon, do you have an experience in Sierra Leone?
Of course. And as Sandra have said, I work in the public space. And being in the public space is more toxic than being in a company where they have a little bit more structured approach. In the public space, everybody knows it's not your father's property, it's not my father's property, it's a country property. And also in the public space where politics has divided the way we make decisions, it's become more critical. So when you have a leader that doesn't listen, it's add to the toxicity in the space, because most often they listen to you because they think you are of their kind. It could be of their kind in political thinking, of their kind in religion, or of their kind by their tribe. So often what I do, having worked in the public for some years, I often muster the courage to go to the office because at my level, I report straight to any minister that I work with. I want to ensure that I have a conversation with the minister. Say, Minister, will it be right for us to look at it this way? Will it be right? And I'll often say, these are mere suggestions. It's up to you. So he has the feeling that he's the one making the decision. A similar thing, I want just to share this experience with you. When I was developing the National Youth Plan or National Youth Policy 2020 to 2025, there are two critical issues that I wanted to talk about in that. First is about establishing pathways for for apprenticeship and guidance, career guidance. We know young people are often challenged with this. Another is about youth and their sexuality and substance abuse. On apprenticeship and career guidance, they agreed, the minister agreed. When I talk about youth and their sexuality and substance abuse, the minister said, no, Marlon, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to talk about this. I had to sit him down and talk him through that. Yes, we're not counting gays or lesbians in this. What we are trying to do is to just figure out, because as young people, their sexuality counts. That will also help us to look at the services we provide for them. Because for the youth ministry, we have what is called SR8, SR8, which is sexual reproductive health. How do we prepare our young people? How do we ensure we are able to line up medical attention, medical service for them? But also with substance abuse, it was a kind of dicey thing. How do you recognize that? Yes, these are vices that young people are grappling with. Do we leave them alone with it? Or do we have that transition? And we were able to understand that because with the substance abuse vogue now is transitioning from a criminal issue to a health issue. How do we also support that structure? How do we also support young people? So, in nutshell, it's also part of us raising up our advocacy skills, especially to our superiors. But that will have to come from within. I often say I have demonstrative leadership. In the office where I work, I ensure that when we share responsibility, I handle the menial jobs.
Okay.
I ensure that I will come to the cleaner. Do you have water? Do you have mop? Do you? So they start seeing that sense of humility. It really counts. That sense of coming down to their space, ensuring that you can have that conversation with them, ensuring that you can listen to them, because that gives in the buying in. And they will say, oh, Director Marlon is here, is the person that I can talk to, I can open my heart to. So also that path will also open up a pathway for you to also sense what is happening at the low level, but also you are able to put that together and transmit that to your superior, who will have to make the decision or help you to make those decisions.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mr. Bockarie. Before I go, we'll be going shortly for breaks, but let me just read some questions from our participants. When we come back from the break, you respond to them and then we'll wrap up. Emmanuel again says, how do you cope with a leader who centralized all tasks and doesn't delegate? I think Marlon has touched a bit on that. And then Philip Achu Zaglago says, government of Ghana should start paying workers at post before making arrangements for recruitment. Okay. So on that note, we'll take your questions. When we come back, we're going to go on a short break. Stay tuned.
As the corporate sector evolves, Berkha Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Berkha Africa. Berkha Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Berkha's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Berkha supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.berkhaafrica.com for more information.
Welcome back. This is the Leadership Dialogue series brought to you by Berkha Africa. And wherever you're joining us from, we are excited to have you on today's call. We have Coach Sandra from Nigeria and Mr. Marlon Bockarie-Konteh from Sierra Leone, but joining us live from Gambia. Mr. Marlon and Coach Sandra, welcome back from the break.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been quite an interesting conversation so far. Apart from all the tools and the skills that I'll be taking away, one of the things that I would really bring to bear that will guide my leadership is to be careful so that I don't get the people I lead to show me shaggy reasons. Our time is fast spent, but it's been very, very interesting so far. Mr. Bockarie, as we are wrapping up, I just want you to share with us what are some strategies that leaders can use to prepare both current and emerging leadership for political, economic, and social complexities that are unique to Africa, even though the whole world is in turmoil right now. Berkha Africa is more focused on African leadership. So what are some strategies and tools that you leaders can use in such transitioning moment to prepare both current and emerging leaders?
So my experience is you have to be thorough as a leader. You have to know your environment. You have to know your people. You have to know the instruments. In the public space, we rely mostly on instruments. What is the policy? What does the law say? What does the regulation say? But in addition to that, you may look at two things for a start. The first is about strength base. All of your people, you should know them and you should know each of their strengths. How do you ensure that you are able to lift them up and ensure you build that sense of confidence, that motivation that, yes, this you can do better, but this you have to learn. So the first strategy is about strength base, which is supported by motivation. Another one is about goals. What are the goals do you want to achieve? And most often, people who just join organization get confused. So what I often do is to ensure that you are able to reduce this goal to very short-term goals, but incrementally the individual will start seeing the bigger picture. So you want to ensure, okay, for me, I often start by having trackers. I call them trackers. These are just boxes. It could be in Excel or it could be in word process, wherein you are able to look at what you want to achieve, which the responsible person, what the resources that are exposed to it, and keeping track of those, because when you have those trackers, you are able to achieve those, and the individual will start seeing the progress along the line. It could be a weekly target, it could be a monthly target, it could be a quarterly target. If you are able to do that, it gives the individual the confidence of first taking those baby steps, because everybody will have to take baby steps. People will have to make mistakes, but how you correct them, how you ensure you build that sense of confidence in them is very, very critical.
Beautiful, beautiful. Before I take Coach Sandra's remarks, I have Tom Nyama. He says, great education in evolving leadership strategies. Thanks. He says, my question is it a good leadership strategy to guide an inexperienced team through a high-risk terrain that is familiar to the leader? Coach Sandra, this sounds more like a coaching question.
You want to take that question? Yeah, do you want to
No,
ask
I
the
want
question? I
you
didn't get
to
that
take
clearly.
it.
Take the
Sounds
question
more like
again,
a
please.
coaching question. Is it good? Is it a good leadership strategy
Now, when
to
you
guide?
yes.
Is it a good leadership strategy to guide an inexperienced team through a high-risk terrain that is familiar to the leader?
Okay, so is it a good leadership strategy to guide an inexperienced team through a high-risk terrain that is familiar to the leader? Now, do you want to be the only person doing it? Do you want to be the only person doing it? Fine, it's high risk, right? And I want to believe you've started preparing your team. So it's a good leadership trait. You're able to. So when I talked about allowing people make mistakes, now let me clarify that. I'm sure maybe that's where the question is coming from. If people make little mistakes and you don't hold them, you don't come hard on them, they are comfortable that when they make mistakes, they don't hide it, because sometimes when they hide those small mistakes they make, it becomes a mountain of issues. And so that's what I meant. Now you have a high risk, we have projects, like let me use my organization for instance. There are some high risk projects that I know that I should have my eyes on, because I'm dealing with CEOs of large organizations. But what do? I take along my team, and I don't micromanage them. However, I have my eyes in what they are doing, because sometimes I will not be there. That's the truth. And sometimes I may be ill. So is it that when I'm not around, everything should stand still? No. Life has to go on in the organization. So it is the way you've started bringing them up. That is very important. That when it comes to that high risk terrain, they will be able to do something. They may not do it as perfect as you are because they don't know all you know. However, that's again, what structures are you putting in place to teach them what you know? A lot of leaders don't do that. They feel that their job will be taken. I don't have time for that. Everything I have, I put it into you. I put it into you because I'm not indispensable. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think you nailed it right, very strong. That fit into what Mr. Bockarie mentioned in his earlier submission, where he spoke about the structures. What structures do you have in place? What systems have you put to run the structures? What policies or rules or regulations that guide the implementation of the systems, for the structures that you have put in place? And then to hit it to do as an icing on your response is the competencies. What competencies do we have to run this? So in response to your question, like Coach Sandra said, Mr. Nyama, is about building capacity, building the capacity and strengthening the competencies of your teams. At times you may have to expose them to some risky, but it depends also. High risk, low risk, risk is risk. So you as a leader, it's your responsibility to make sure that you build the competencies of the people to be able to stand and handle any level of risk in line with their jobs. Thank you so much, Coach Sandra. So maybe we may want to have your final comment, and then we'll call it a day. Coach Sandra, how can coaching support smooth leadership success in these uncertain times to drive effective African organizations, whether private or public? This would be more like your wrapping words.
Okay, great. But what I would say is we are in uncertain times and it's not going to end. It's going to continue. Now, our leadership success it's not about having all the answers. For crying out loud, you cannot have all the answers. Even me, with all my experience, with all my certification, with all my years, I still don't have all the answers. So what you should do as a leader is using those coaching skills, using coaching as your style, as your leadership style, to ask questions, knowing that you cannot have the whole answers. Develop your leaders so that they can be able to think even when you're not there. They can be able to adapt with the craziness we have in the country now. They can be able to uphold values even under pressure. Because I tell you, they are under pressure. I had a bit of that pressure from when Mr. Marlon was speaking. Even him as a leader is also under pressure. So they are under pressure. So what coaching does is it creates a reflective space where that kind of leader you want will be forged, and where smooth succession will be able to materialize, and it becomes very possible. And that's what I will say. Thank you so much, Lizzie.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is so powerful. Mr. Bockarie, all too soon we have come to the end of today's session. What are your parting words for our leaders and emerging leaders? Like Coach Sandra said, we are in an uncertain time, and the uncertainties are not going to be certain anytime soon. The world is evolving, institutions are evolving. What recommendations and advice would you want to give our leaders that are listening to you?
For our leaders, I want to encourage them to be authentic.
That's it.
To be authentic and ensure that they have demonstrative skills, because those we lead are watching us. Those we lead are picking on every bit we do, decisions we take, actions we take, our relation to keeping the rules, our relations to giving them an opportunity to learn. If as leaders we are not able to do that, then we are not preparing the next generation of leaders. However, to those we lead, also they should be in position to step up the plate, to come up for responsibilities that will ensure that they have the right skills, they have the right competence in ensuring that they are able to lead after the leaders have gone. On that note, I think that's what I will end up with.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bockarie. Coach Sandra, your final words.
Oh, what would I say? I think thank you so much. I've also learned from you, Marlon. Thank you so much. What I want to say is a lot of leaders, you do not use coaching skills. I know that because I see the things, I even see what's on social media, LinkedIn. However, you can learn it. Yeah. And be ready to learn those skills and start practicing it on your spouses and on your children and on your family members. As you practice those skills, it will become better. They said practice makes perfect. Rigidity is a sign of weakness. However, flexibility is a sign of strength. Get ready to start practicing to use the coaching skills and behaviors. Those are my last words. Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Coach Sandra and Mr. Bockarie. All too soon, we've come to the end of today's session. Let me just give you key highlights that you can take along with you from today's webinar. One, the world of uncertainties is not coming to an end soon. The world is evolving, leadership trends are evolving, institutions are evolving, nations are evolving. So as a leader in such times, from all the things Coach Sandra and Mr. Bockarie said, one, keep reimagining yourself and your institution, and assess your structures. What structures do we have in place? What systems do we have in place? What competencies do we have? What do we need to redo? What do we need to refine? And then another thing that came very strong in the conversation is practice inclusive leadership. Ask more, listen more, and be patient, knowing that the people you are leading are also going through transitions. They are also under pressure. And then also what comes into the another key thing in the conversation was to build strong emotional intelligence. Strong emotional intelligence, because for you to drive your institutions to high-performing institutions that gets the results, you as a leader, according to Mr. Marlon, you are to what? You are to bring about the implementation. And who are the implementers? They are the people that you lead. So in driving people, systems, and processes, you need high level of emotional intelligence. And he also mentioned about being authentic. Be an authentic leader. Practice authenticity. You don't need to hide or shy from the struggles that you are going through as a leader, because as you open up and share with your teams, as you become authentic, they see you for who you really are and want to be part of your leader, supporting your leadership journey. So be vulnerable, be authentic, practice strategic humility to drive your teams and organizations to safety. On that note, we want to say thank you very much for joining us for today's session. This is proudly brought to you by Berkha Africa. You can go to our website, www.berkhaafrica, for more information. You can share the link on Facebook, WhatsApp, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you think there's a leader friend or you are a manager or a colleague worker who think, I think my leader must listen to this, please share the link to them. And we also offer coaching services at Berkha Africa. If you can check in the comment box and wherever you're joining us, whether LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, you would find our contact and WhatsApp. Let's keep growing. Let's keep adding value to make Africa a better place for all of us. I am Lizziane Kwabeji. Until we meet next month, it's a goodbye from Berkha Africa. Thank you.
As the corporate sector evolves, Berkha Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Berkha Africa. Berkha Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Berkha's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Berkha supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.berkhaafrica.com for more information.